High Point that left 5 people dead. 3 of them were children.
On a cold January morning in 2023, the Crayton family home in High Point, North Carolina, became the site of an unimaginable tragedy. The family of 5, once seen as the embodiment of the American dream, was shattered in a moment of unfathomable violence. Robert J. Crayton Jr., a 45-year-old father, opened fire inside his home, killing his wife, Athalia, and their 3 children, 18-year-old Cassin, a 16-year-old daughter, and a 10-year-old son. Then, with the same gun, Robert took his own life. What could drive a man to such an act of sheer brutality against his own family? Was it a snap decision? Or was there something darker and deeper beneath the surface? A ticking time bomb waiting to explode? The Craytons seemed like a normal, loving family. Robert Crayton Jr. had a history of mental illness, but those close to him believed he was managing his condition. Athalia, his wife of many years, was known for her warm smile and her commitment to her family. Their eldest son, Cassin, had just turned 18 and was preparing for a future full of promise. The 2 younger children were well liked at their local schools. To the outside world, they seemed to have a relatively peaceful life, filled with the usual ups and downs of any family. But behind the closed doors of their High Point home, a much different story was unfolding. Robert Crayton Jr. had been struggling with his mental health for years. Diagnosed with a severe mental illness, he had a history of erratic behavior and bouts of paranoia. Friends and family knew of his struggles but hoped he was on the path to recovery. Over time, however, Robert's mental state began to deteriorate. He became increasingly withdrawn, his behavior more erratic. The signs were there, but no one realized just how dire the situation was becoming. There were incidents, arguments with neighbors, tense interactions with his wife, and moments of unexplained anger. The police had been called to the Crayton residence before, but each time Robert had calmed down, assured the officers that everything was fine and the matter was dropped. January 7th, 2023, began like any other Saturday morning. The neighborhood was quiet. Families were beginning their day. But inside the Crayton house, a storm was brewing. Just before 7 a.m., neighbors reported hearing loud voices coming from the home, shouting, then a sudden, chilling silence. Moments later, gunshots rang out. Not 1, not 2, but 5 rapid shots, followed by a deafening stillness. When the police arrived, they were met with a scene of utter horror. Robert Crayton Jr. lay dead on the floor, a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his head. Nearby were the bodies of his wife, Athalia, and their 3 children. Each had been shot at close range. For the responding officers, the scene was almost too much to bear. Even for those hardened by years on the force, this crime was something else, an act of pure devastation.
Pushing to 28 years at this police department, we never had anything like this happen before.
Was suffering with some mental illness.
As investigators began to piece together the events of that morning, they quickly realized that this was not a random act of violence, but a tragic culmination of Robert's ongoing mental health struggles. Records revealed a troubling pattern. A man who had repeatedly sought help, but perhaps not received the intervention he so desperately needed. Robert had been prescribed medication, but it was unclear if he was taking it consistently. In the months leading up to the murders, his paranoia seemed to intensify. He believed people were watching him, that his own family was plotting against him. These delusions fed into a dangerous downward spiral that no one around him fully grasped. The news of the Crayton family murder rocked the community of High Point to its core. People who knew the family struggled to comprehend the brutality of the crime. How could a father, a man who was supposed to protect his family, commit such an atrocity? The questions hung heavily in the air, unanswered and haunting. In the days that followed, a memorial was set up outside the Crayton home. Flowers, photographs, and messages of love and sorrow poured in from friends, neighbors, and strangers alike. A community that had been touched by this tragedy came together, united in grief and confusion. But as the shock began to wear off, the difficult questions started to surface. How could this have been prevented? Were there warning signs that were missed? And what does this case say about the broader failures of the mental health care system? There were indications that Robert had sought help, but the support he needed may not have been available or adequate. The stigma surrounding mental illness, the lack of access to consistent care, and the fear of reaching out for help, all these factors played a part in the tragedy that unfolded. The Crayton family murder case is more than just a tragic story of a family destroyed. It is a stark reminder of the hidden battles many face with mental illness, the cracks in our mental health care system, and the devastating consequences when those cracks become chasms. In the wake of the murders, local advocacy groups have called for better mental health resources and gun control measures. They hope that this tragic loss can serve as a catalyst for meaningful change, so that other families might be spared the heartbreak the Craytons faced. The story of the Crayton family is a painful one. A story of a father's mental health battle lost, of a family torn apart, and of a community left grappling with its own helplessness. But it is also a story that asks us to look deeper, to question what we can do better, and to find ways to ensure that help is available before it's too late. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, don't wait. Reach out. There is help and there is hope.